Good morning, everyone. Good morning to Desiree and Melissa, to all of those who have joined thus far. See some good morning messages in the chat. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our fireside chat on strategic self-advocacy and visibility. Today's conversation is all about owning your own value, elevating your voice, and creating opportunities to be seen for your impact. My name is April Arnold, and I am the incoming 2026 Director at Large for Professional Development Events, and I am thrilled to be joined by Desiree Cain, Director of Human Resources for Charter Communications. She is a seasoned HR leader and mentor who has built her career on empowering others to step into their full potential. And so I am also want to mention that she is the recipient of the 2025 WICT Carolina's Outstanding Mentor Award. Welcome, Desiree.
Thank you, April. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Really, I just love being in spaces like this to share and partner. So I'm excited.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and jump right in and get started by learning a little bit about your journey and what has inspired you to approach your self-advocacy.
Yes, when I think about self-advocacy, I first have to kind of talk about advocacy because that's where I got bit by the HR bug. I found early in my career that I loved being able to be a go-between or advocate for people, being resources, helping them find resources, or really being able to provide perspective for them to show up in new ways. And for a very long time in the first part of my career, I really spent a lot of time like pouring out as much as I could into others. And that really kind of led me to be successful in my career. But one of the things that I didn't understand value for was self-advocacy. And I know it may potentially kind of touch in people who are, similar to me, where you are the counselor or the mediator or the psychiatrist for your family or your friends. You're the person that everybody goes to. And I didn't realize that as much attention and as much intention that I was pouring into others, I wasn't pouring into myself. And once I understood the value of that, I think that that's what allowed me to kind of step more into my confidence of speaking up for myself, even when it was hard, because I did it because it was rooted in, something that I needed for me, as opposed to me just emptying myself for everybody else.
That is important, making sure your cup is full, so to speak, before you pour from your cup, because you can't pour from an empty cup. So that makes 100% sense. Is there a defining moment that you realized the importance in particular?
Yeah, I think really I was just to kind of take it back a little bit. I started my HR career when I identified that I really loved advocating for people. I didn't know that at that time that that's kind of what HR does. So I was very intentional about really leaning into my curiosity of what is HR. There's so many different facets to it, and how can I maximize what this is? So my curiosity really leaned me into figuring out roles and being strategic and intentional about different positions under the umbrella of human resources that would give me, just pause on understanding where I would best fit. So over the course of maybe 8 to 10 years before I got to Charter in 2019, I was able to kind of touch every single facet of HR. So when I got to Charter, I said, I just need to get my feet in the door. I'll find my footing once I get there. And I came in as a recruiter. Within my first 3 years at the company, I was promoted 3 times. So I went from recruiter to HR generalist to HR manager. And then now my current role is HR director. And one of the things that really stood out for me is I was thankful enough to have leaders that saw me, but they gave me space to be to have autonomy. And I had one particular leader, Brad Nelson. I don't know if any of you know him. He's amazing. But he used to share with me, or he used to say, "You are brilliant, period. Hard stop." There was
Mm,
not a but, there was not a if, there was not a condition that was tied to it. It simply was a call for me to understand that he saw me and that he was giving me pause to give myself permission to see me the way others saw me. And it was in that moment that I recognized that I'm on assignment. And I share this even with my mentees. When you are on assignment, you are placed where you are for a reason right now. Either it's something that you need to learn about yourself, there's something that you need to do to inspire others, or there's something that you yourself, nobody else can give that space to make it better. And when I identified that, I really started to prioritize what makes sense for Des, what makes sense for me to really show up and provide as much as I can in the space that I'm in so that I could be on assignment and learn what I'm supposed to learn, but also give what I'm supposed to give in the space that I'm assigned to. So that was really the defining moment for me. It was like a culmination of all the things that I learned in advocating for others. But what am I doing to turn that same energy into advocating for myself?
yeah, yeah. Was there any hard lessons along the way that you?
Of course, April, yes. Yes, the journey, and I think, people can attest to this. Like our journey is where the reward is. And where there's reward, it really is tied to not being easy because we're really whole human beings that are walking or being put in spaces that come with behaviors that may not be healthy, that come with inner critic and self-doubt and thoughts that are born in spaces where we may not have had the support that we needed. So we're constantly in this journey of kind of unlearning behavior that's not conducive to where we want to go or who we want to be. So my journey was wrought with, you know, uh, potholes and pitfalls and walls, but I started to recognize that my challenges were sent to me for me. It was meant for me to move through or to learn from or to grow from. And they were very intentional because whatever it was I was supposed to learn in that moment, it was meant for me to prepare me for whoever I was becoming. And I tried to model that in my mind. I also tried to make sure that I'm prioritizing my perspective. Um, when we're presented with a challenge or we're presented with a difficult space, um, all it may take is just for you to reframe what that thought is instead of what's happening here? Like, why does it have to happen to me? Changing that to what am I supposed to learn about myself in this
mm,
moment? And when you can
that's
take that, when you can restructure what that reframing is and take that, you are able to look at things in a different perspective, in a different light, and find value in your challenges to help kind of close those gaps on what you need.
that's that's very powerful, very powerful. And we can live. We could probably go on, but we will we dive even deeper with what self advocacy strategically looks like in practice.
Mhm.
And, you touched on a little bit of reflection on branding. And so, how can we talk about our accomplishments with confidence and authenticity and not come across being arrogant, you know.
Mm, that's a good one. That's a good one. I think first we have to identify the why behind it, right? Like, one of the things, especially in spaces that you're in, sometimes you're not always connected to traditionally, in a perfect world, a leader or someone on your team that will advocate for you or will, come into the room and say, Desiree has so much to offer. Just sit down and listen, and this is what she can provide. And because of that, sometimes we kind of get in our own way because we're waiting on somebody else to give us permission to show up. So in those spaces that you're in, and really being able to not just talk about the things that you have done or your accomplishments that have come across, but really focusing on the impact and on the value that you can provide to the space that you're in. One of the difficult things, and all of my HR business partners can attest to this, is there's sometimes a struggle being able to convince a business partner of the value of HR, where we're not red tape, we're not getting in the way of what you want to do as a business. We're really here as a partnership. And identifying how you can speak the language of where you are can help to present what you've done, how you can add to the space from a value perspective, but it also ties, instead of just you speaking from your perspective, you're meeting people where they are so that they understand what you have to offer and how it can contribute to the space. Many times you won't have to say or shout from the rooftops what your accomplishments are. Your work will speak for you. But you've got to identify what the why is behind why it's important for you to advocate for yourself, because you have to believe in you first before anybody else will. So tying to what the business language is, but also really identifying what value you have to bring to the table, it will make it easier to have those conversations or discussions and what you can lend to the space to make it better.
Mhm. Are there any mistakes that are commonly taken when trying to execute?
Yeah, I think that, for me, I can speak for me, and I can certainly speak for, people that I've mentored that have kind of come up to a wall, is that um, there's not a connection that's made to um, the why you are valuable. And it has nothing to do with what anybody tells you. It has everything to do with what you're telling yourself. So sometimes what happens is we say, I need to make sure that I'm raising my hand, or I need to make sure that I'm saying that I'm important, or that my voice needs to be heard, but you yourself don't believe it. So there's a task that has to happen in the moment before it feels that you're connected to it, or before you feel authentically showing up as you, is that you have to believe that you have value. You have to believe that you have something to offer, and you have to believe that you are deserving of it. And because of those prior struggles, or sometimes those childhood wounds or young adult wounds that we have not yet faced or addressed, they get in the way of us being able to see how we can make something better. And it starts to feel almost disjointed when you're attempting to kind of check the box and saying, I'm advocating for myself. But you first have to believe in why you're advocating for yourself, and also why you're important and why you're deserved in that particular space that you're in. So that's the first part, is really addressing or coming up on what's important for you to really be of value to you before you can show that or prove that to anybody else.
Oh, wow, awesome. Outside of looking at the root cause internally, right? Because it does
Mhm.
begin with us. Is there examples of language or phrasing that helps communicate the value, first to yourself if you're speaking to yourself, but then outwardly, as you're trying to get the why across and make that connection.
Yeah, I think being curious. So the first thing that generally works is, depending upon the space that you're in, or where you're at when you're communicating your value, is understanding where the gap or what the gap is and how you can add to it. So some of the language, or it really begins from questions. What is it in this space that you need, or that you desire, or where's the opportunity that you're struggling in how I can show up and lend to the space. And it provides kind of a app, um, or opportunity, I should say, for you to be able to kind of toot your own horn in a sense, because you understand now, when you're seek to understand, what it is that that space or wherever you are may need. You're able to kind of build in language around what your expertise may be. Oh, it's funny that you mentioned that. I learned this. This is what I learned, or this is what I took the last time I was in this particular position, and this was the outcome. So really kind of talking about that, ROI on what you've learned after you understand what the ask is, or what the gap is, or what the opportunity is. It better positions you for you to be able to speak to your value, because it's relevant and it makes sense to what's necessary in that space that you're in.
Oh, that's great um, feedback, especially with regards to language and communication. We're in communications, and so quite often miscommunications happen, and it's centrally revolving around the language that's being used. And so once, of course, you start advocating for yourself, um, after you first believe, right? Step one, starting with yourself. Um, how do you transition then in the next step of making sure people see your impact, that your message is coming across clearly, and it's visible?
Yeah, that's a good one. I saw a quote, and it was attributed to Viola Davis, but it was on social media, so you never know where it originated from. But it resonated with me because it said, your purpose is not what you do, it's what happens in others when you do what you do. And I think, to your point, or to your question, is what's happening in the space that you're in? How are you contributing to it, and how can you make it better? Because what people will remember is the impact and the influence that you had in the space that you're in. And that ultimately, without you even knowing it, or without even understanding, you know, what is kind of at play there, it speaks for you. So there isn't anything that you have to physically do to speak to your value, other than understanding or focusing on the impact or the influence that you have on the people that you are directly or indirectly connected to in the space that you're in. So really leaning into that, really leaning into the curious part of how you can really drive inspiration, or drive influence, or add to, or be a model for what you wish existed for you. And then internally, you actually become who you needed. Instead of looking for someone outside to be that champion for you, you become your own champion, because your focus and your intention is based on the outcome of what you bring to the table, not the tangible part of what it is, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Would you say, um, given our current environment, remote and hybrid settings, um, we have to do that more creatively
Mm-hmm.
to increase
Yes.
the visibility day to day, particularly so in a larger male dominated environment.
Mm.
Can you speak a little bit of how to stay relevant, if you will?
Yeah, yeah. I think, because especially from a remote and a hybrid or even just in the way that our organization is structured, we're very much connected to the business units, to the buildings that we're in. We don't really generally have a lot of visibility in a physical sense to other areas outside either the building or even outside of our company in different companies as well. And I think one of the things that we undershoot, especially as women, is that we don't always lean into our network because we don't want to be a burden or we don't want to, cause somebody any type of, pause in their day to ask a question or to gain insight. But when you understand that the magic happens in the network, the magic happens in your ability to build relationship. It really starts to drive that importance around making sure that you are reaching out. And it could be a ping, it could be an IM message, it could be an email. Hey, I'm just checking in. I remember the last time that we connected. It's been months. I just want to check in with you and see how you're doing. Is there anything that I can do? Or is there a space that you're in right now that I can provide insight for you? Something just that notion to do and leaning into just making sure that you're building community, even if you're virtual. It means so much because what happens is you inadvertently build sponsors. You inadvertently build champions for you when you're not in those rooms because people will remember you when something comes up and says, "Oh my gosh, I know just perfect person that you should reach out to." There is no greater reward for me when I walk into a room somewhere and I'm in a room full of strangers with a couple people that I know, and somebody comes up to me that I don't know and says, "I just had to come in and say hello to you. So and so told me I just had to meet you. So and so told me I had to connect with you." For me, that means that my impact or that my influence or my prior connection with somebody meant something, that they thought enough of me to make sure that somebody else had access, right? But that doesn't happen without putting or prioritizing relationship. And that doesn't always happen in the traditional sense of walking into a room and shaking your hand and introducing yourself. It really comes from being able to be connected to that 6 degrees of separation, so to speak, of, hey, is there somebody you think it'd be important for me to connect with that I have not yet? Simply asking that question of anybody that's in your network will help to expand that, but it also helps to really build your community. I tell people that I connect with all the time, you're part of my family now. Because I really believe that you are part of my family because what you need or what I may need, we need to be able to lean on one another. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that because we're so focused on really kind of suffering silently when you don't have to. And finding ways to do that, especially in such a virtual space that we're in, that will really kind of help to build up your visibility, but also your name and what you can potentially do from an opportunity perspective.
It, you mentioned, mentors and sponsors and allyship, especially with visibility and influence. Are there ways that someone can take to step out there outside of just being curious who haven't yet had that opportunity? What advice could you give to the novice, super shy, introverted is the buzzword right now
Mhm, mhm.
of all people. Um,
Yes.
you know, people that tend to, you know, stay to themselves, but how do we then extend beyond our own personal reach?
Yeah, that's a great question. I tell people that I'm really secretly an introvert that likes to play as an extrovert. Because if you ask me, I would prefer to just kind of shy away, right? I grew up very shy. I grew up, as someone who almost had to kind of be pushed a little bit into the light, so to speak, of picking up the microphone or doing what I needed to do. But I think that it's an ongoing practice So for somebody who is an introvert, one of the things that worked for me is um, identifying an interest first. Because for me anyway, thinking about reaching out to somebody that was a complete stranger, to say, hi, somebody told me to reach out to you and connect to you. It felt foreign for me until I started to do it more. But leaning into an interest. So if there is a particular group or an organization or an event that is tied around an interest that you have, whether it be reading or whether it be, I don't know, crocheting or something like that, if you tie it to something that brings you joy, that's an activity, then it makes it a lot easier for you to build a conversation with someone that you may not know. And then you start to allow that organic seed to grow into other ways that you can connect with someone. On a professional lens, thinking about where you want to go, thinking about what that pathing looks like for you, or thinking about a particular competency or a skill that you have not yet learned that you have a lot of interest in. If you identify that one thing, it makes it a lot easier, whether you're an introvert or extrovert, to be able to reach out to someone who may be an expert in that, or may be able to provide you with some guidance or some tools that you can use that will add to your curiosity. So I would say identify an interest, a shared interest or a shared affinity that you can lean into first, and that makes it a lot easier for you to build the connection of who you're reaching out to, because you're tying to the what or the why you're reaching out to them.
Got it. Understood. With the mentors and sponsors and building allyship, um, reaching out beyond our own comfort zones,
Mhm.
um, was there a particular mentor or sponsor that modeled that behavior for you?
Yes, I have been grateful. It's just not lost on me of the number of amazing people that I've come across my journey, whether I've worked directly with them or whether, I accidentally on purpose, came across their path. But there's been a number of mentors and people that don't even know that they're my mentor. I would find, you know, I would find people that would embody how I wanted to show up. And I would try to understand for me, what does that look like for me? Right? Where I would celebrate, how someone may be able to command a room or the presence that's felt or how I felt when I finished talking to somebody. I want people to feel like that too. And I think the more that I leaned into those examples of how can I, at the end of the day, make sure that people feel connected when they're engaging with me. What are things that I can do to prioritize that? I found that I was becoming all of the things that I saw, that I attune to, in those models, right? I can go down a list of names of people in this organization and we'd be here all day. But I think the key to that is understanding that it's so important for you to have people that you see that represent or create representation for you, because it means that there's or it adds to kind of the magic of belief. It adds to the magic of really leaning into what could be, even if you're not there yet, right? And it's important for you to identify who those people are, what those characteristics are, so you can start to create what you wish existed in you. And I've always really, really, really not allowed that to miss me, that people come across my path for a reason. There is no mistake in who I am, have a pleasure of meeting or working with or sitting on a call and listening to. There is something in that for me, because what's for me will not miss me. So being very present and understanding that and being able to pull from those examples that you have of mentors and sponsors and allies and how you can replicate that. Because what we're here to do is inspire. So what is it that that person embodies that you can make your own so that somebody else can be inspired to show up fully or show up present or show up as their best self so that they can continue to spread what we're trying to do, which is build community.
Absolutely. Do you find oftentimes we underestimate the power of strategically tying yourself to mentors and expanding our network in those relationships um, for whatever reason, one way or another, fear, right? Is probably the biggest one, right? Just
Mhm.
stepping out of that comfort zone,
Mhm.
not wanting to expand that network. So we underestimate that power. Can we expand that a little bit?
Yes, 100%. I think that it's not that there isn't knowledge that it's important. I think that there are a few things that humans, women, may, or some women, it may get in the way is that they have not yet identified how it will build value for them in their space. Meaning that either they don't necessarily believe that there is something there that can help them to get to where they want to go, or there could be a fear of stepping outside of their comfort zone. And like I said, it's not that we don't understand that there's an importance, it's that we don't necessarily take action or cultivate it in a way that helps to build roots for us to pull from. One of the things, particularly in looking to kind of establish a network or really kind of leaning into that space that has really served me well is taking a moment and seeking what I want, what I feel in that moment I need, right? So if there is, for example, me reaching out to a network to build visibility or build a desire around wanting to be seen, and or put in different spaces to show, what I may have to offer. I first have to kind of take a step back to understand um, the outcome of what I'm adding to that particular space, as opposed to the action of me getting there. So there's a couple of things that are at play. Yes, a lot of it is around fear, a lot of it is around doubt. The other part is, not necessarily understanding the value of how it can add to what you're intentional about in your journey. But once you start to really kind of work through those things, you'll prioritize, the importance of the connection because it makes sense to your journey. But yes, there is a lot that we do to kind of, undershoot, what the importance is in kind of building those particular connections for sure.
Absolutely. You shared some incredible insights and really, really valuable nuggets in jewels, um, especially with your storied journey, from where you started to coming to now. Um, is there a way that going forward, after for those of us that are on the call, what are some actionable steps that we can begin to put in place in the next 5 minutes?
Ooh, that's a good one. Next 5 minutes, no pressure. No, I think one of the things that I love to do this exercise, and I also, if any of my mentees were on the call, they would tell you, yep, here comes the homework. Um, but one of the things that I have found to be extremely successful is taking stock of the lies that you tell yourself. And when I say that, I'm speaking of your self-doubt, your limiting beliefs, your inner critic. When you are confronted with something that causes you pause in taking an action because your mind won't allow you to really show up fully in that moment. Take stock of what's happening in your body in that moment. What is the wording or phrasing or I can't do this. No one wants to see me. Somebody else can do it because nobody wants to hear my voice. Take stock literally of what you are saying to yourself because you're giving your body, you're giving your mind, you're giving your spirit a command. So when you take stock of what you're telling yourself, to interject a complete opposite of what that statement is. I cannot do this. I can do this. No one wants to see me. Everybody wants to see me. There's no value that I can add to this space. My full self provides value to this space. When you, in that moment, challenge yourself with a complete opposite statement or command of what that self-doubt is, it causes your body, your mind, your heart to show up different. And that takes practice because you've got to give yourself grace. You've spent decades leaning into that inner critic and that self-doubt, right? It really takes practice to be able to challenge yourself in that moment. And when you do that, every single time that you're confronted with another challenge, or every single time that you hear that voice comes up, it becomes easier. But that opposite or that affirmation becomes louder. And that is what's going to give you the gumption, the audacity, the dare to show up and take a step or have the courage to do what you did not do 2, 3 years ago. And every single time you do it, it becomes easier to do because now you are living in what your affirmation or what your belief is in you, as opposed to expectations that you've created for others to hold of you. You're really leaning into that full cup that we talked about at the start of the call, because your cup that you have shouldn't be empty. One, it should be full, but what's in the cup is for you. What is overflowing from the cup, and this is something that I heard from, I can't remember where it was for, it made so much sense. But the overflow is what you give to others, meaning that you should always be operating from a full cup. And if you're not, you need to take stock of what that is and what language you need to start to fill yourself back up. So that's the first thing you can do as a takeaway in the next 5 minutes, because there's something that you're going to be presented today that you're going to hear your inner critic come in and say, no, 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 we're not doing it. I don't feel comfortable. So challenge yourself in that moment. The other
Agreed.
thing,
That's
yeah,
that's our first homework assignment.
that's your first homework assignment. First homework assignment. And then the other thing that you can do is start to write what those affirmations are. Write them down. Write them down. You need to be able to see them every day, whether it's sticky notes on your computer, whether it's on your mirror, whether it's something that you put in the car, whether it's something that you listen to when you're on your way to work. Start to ingest that. Allow that to be part of your daily diet. Because your diet isn't just what you eat, it's everything that you consume. So make sure that every single thing that you do, whether you're seeing something, whether you're listening to something, whether you're really kind of immersing yourself in space, make sure that you're seeing what that affirmation is so that it starts to become part of your normal behavior. So those are two. I gave you two things. I gave you a one extra credit assignment too.
One, two, one, two. Well, we start with those two items for homework. Is there a measure? Say, something we like data, right?
Mhm.
And the measurable data that we can measure that what we are doing to advocate pour into ourselves, tie in a little joy, right?
Mhm, mhm.
That is visible and this it is strategically working. So how can we measure the data?
Yeah, that's a great question. A few different ways. One way is that you're not going to work exhausted. I'm going home. I'm sorry, not going home exhausted every day. Meaning you're tired from the work, but you're not exhausted in the sense that you've poured out everything and you don't have anything else to give. Right? You tie it to how fulfilled you also feel as well. But from a external piece, or what you can see, is that more people are coming to ask you questions. More people are coming to you for guidance. You're being tapped to have opportunities to be able to lend your voice or lend your perspective. You know, you're also, being considered. Hey, somebody mentioned you. Would you be interested in this? You're really starting to kind of see the your effort and the seeds that you're planting, because every conversation that you have, every connection that you make is a seed that you're planting. And when you plant the seed has no choice but to take root, has no choice but to bear fruit. And when it's time for that fruit to come, time to be picked, who are they going to tap on? Right? And it may be something, seeds that you're planting now, that is preparing you for opportunities to come 6 months from now or a year from now, just because of the connections that you've made. So I think being intentional about the being present, being intentional about understanding the value of what you can bring to a space, but also the value of what comes from connection and community. Your seeds will do what they do for you. There's nothing that you would need to do other than just lay the seeds down. And eventually, when the time comes, you'll be tapped, you'll be asked, your name will be mentioned. And that's how you can start to see that all of the things that you're doing on your intentional journey of being strategic about your visibility or strategic about your self-advocacy, all of those things will come to term there for you.
Great stuff. Planting seeds, just letting it be. We're pouring into ourselves, and so I'm sure that uh, the audience also has some burning questions that they would love to ask. We do have a QR code, I believe, um, and it's there in the chat. Also, it will be displayed on the screen so that you can put your questions in for Desiree to ask. Um, while those questions begin to roll in, is there a current challenge that you're facing in being seen or heard at work?
Oh, that's a good one. Um, I think a I think a current challenge, if I can, I think this is a two-part answer. So, in the space that I'm in, I support one of our call centers and community solutions for our community solutions group, and I also support our bulk sales team as well. And in this space, I've come to learn and become comfortable with the unknown or the change that's right around the corner, right? So there's a couple things that I need to always keep stock of, and I have to remind myself of, is that I may not necessarily know what the challenge is that's coming. But what I can do in the moment is really prepare to embrace what that change is, but also remind myself to always ask myself, what am I being called to learn about myself in this moment? So when I'm faced with uncertainty, when I'm faced with discomfort, when I'm faced with feeling challenged, that I'm asking myself that. And I'm leaning into the curiosity. Ooh, what is it that I am being? Oh, I'm about to learn something about myself. I'm getting ready to understand something that's necessary for the next version of me. And I think whatever challenge that comes my way, it helps me to digest that a little bit easier. While there's not a specific challenge, and we're probably talking it up, it's probably going to be one that comes now that we're asking about it. But as long as I'm preparing myself with that framing and that perspective, I think that leaning into the curiosity of understanding that there's something here that's for me and only me and not anybody else, regardless of what that challenge is. I think that helps me to digest that a lot better and helps me to um, show up into whatever that next space is more confidently.
Great. We do have a question from the chat. Any advice you can provide regarding end of year self evaluations? Those are on the horizon. Literally just had a reminder that those were upcoming in our team meeting this morning. So, what is worth including and not including?
Yes. Oh, that's a great question. My team will tell you. I tell them at the start of the year, start writing your stuff down. Start writing the things down that you do right now because it's gonna come a time before you know it. It's time to really kind of write down all of the things that you've done. I think the biggest thing and what I share and what to include in your end of year evaluations is making sure to be clear about what your actions have done to add to the business objective or the outcome. So if you have a particular goal, if there's a particular metric that you have that you are assessed by, that your verbiage and what you've done from an action, whether it be something that's subjective or whether there is actual, this is the actual thing that we did and I can see it and touch it, that you're tying it to the business outcome or the goal. Because what you're doing is you're not only talking about what you've done to add to the space that you're in or what you've contributed, you're adding to that information of how it impacted the business in a positive way. So I would always make sure that anything that you're adding to your evaluations, always add the thing and what that thing did for the business and how it tied to the business objective. I would make sure, just as advice, to remove anything that is I feel or I felt, because feelings are fleeting. You
Mm.
want to be able to speak to what you've learned. So instead of I feel or I felt, what I learned, because it speaks to what you called yourself to do in that moment, but it also does another thing for you is it adds to what you can contribute in a future role or the future 2026 goals or whatever that looks like. Because those evaluations are also something from, a hiring perspective. Sometimes those end of year evaluations are looked at. And what you can contribute to that next space. So if you spend a lot of time, it shows there's intentionality around what you're learning and what challenges you are presented with that speak to kind of what your desire looks like or how you can fit into whatever that next level will be for you. So there are two things I would recommend including for sure.
The next question that we have in the chat: what ways can I break out of the role I am in to show I am a benefit for other positions, such as leadership? What would make me stand out in my current position or role?
Oh, that's a good one. I think one of the things, or a couple of things you could do, is start to find ways to embody what would be necessary for you to do in that next role. So, if the next role, for example, is a leadership, what are things that you can do in your current role that would show up? Is it leading team meetings? Is it offering, to provide to your team insight? Is it identifying gaps or opportunities that want to raise your hand and be able to present or speak to? Right. The other thing is sometimes we look we sometimes look for our visibility to just do like this as opposed to doing this out
Mm.
out. So reach out to peers or reach out to other leaders, sometimes outside of the team that you're on or outside of the business unit that you may be aligned to. Because when you start to reach out, one, it builds your community, which we talked about before, but it also starts to give you some perspective in other areas that you can start to lean into for learning for yourself. If there's a particular competency, if there's a particular skill that is necessary and where you want to go, what are other ways that I can explore what those skills or competencies look like? And what can I do right now while I'm in the role that I'm in to work on those things and practice it on a daily or objective type of way to prepare you for when it's coming.
Awesome. Our next question out of the chat, and there's two, and I'm gonna try and massage them together here, for the sake of time. When you are building your support group, right? And this could be a combination of friends, family, joining a BRG group such as WICT, mentoring. Is there any advice on a particular way that you would go about building that, and even more specific, in helping to be more vocal and advocating for yourself, even especially as, you might be a new mother returning into the workforce, after maternity leave and trying to figure out your footing. You may be new on your team and trying to find, your lane in that space. How would you go about to begin to build your support?
Yes, that's a great question. I think one of the ways, I mean, that your network or your support starts with who you're closely connected to first, because your ability to kind of expand outside of the people that you see or that you work with or that you partner with, then you're able to kind of tap into their network and then tap into that network's network. And that's kind of how you start to kind of build what the network kind of thing looks like. But it really starts with intentional relationship. So instead of thinking about this overarching thing of, I got to build this huge network, you start to be intentional about your relationships. Whether it is that you're a new mother or whether it is that you're new back into the work field, or you've come back from a life of service. Huge thank you to our veterans. Thank you so much for your service. And you're coming back into the working environment. No one knows that is where you or what you're aligned with until you start to be transparent about it. And then
Mm-hmm.
the moment that you open up your mouth and say, hey guys, I am really, I'm really struggling with kind of this transition in my life. You'll start to hear, oh my gosh, me too. Or that was me 5 years ago. Or, oh my gosh, I got the perfect person that you can talk to. It starts with a conversation. So just start having those conversations, and slowly, organically, you'll build relationship. And then from those relationships, you'll build your network. Don't start here, start here.
Little by little. All right, well, we're going to be doing our homework, taking stock of all of, the things that we tell ourselves, right? And
Yes.
we we really appreciate you being here chatting with us today. Lots of valuable insight into navigating, um, today's workforce, ourselves, looking intrinsically internally. I do want to give, the floor over to Melissa for some words and remarks. Thank you, everyone, for joining, on today. And Melissa, here you go.
Thanks, April. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Lindsay Mayers. I am the current Director at Large for Professional Development Events and the 2026 Director at Large for Membership for the WICT Network Carolinas. I want to thank you both, April and Desiree, for such a powerful conversation. Today reminded us that self advocacy isn't about ego, it's about alignment with our own values, tying in things that interest you, as Desiree said, and bringing you joy so that there's a commonality to lean in and build organic relationships. Visibility isn't about being seen, it's about being known for the difference that you make. Some of the other nuggets I took from Desiree is find people who embody how you want to show up. What's for me will not miss me. And what's in the cup for you, what's in the cup is for you. The overflow is for others. And it reminds me of something I say consistently to the people that I mentor, which is you cannot pour into others from an empty cup. So if you enjoyed what you heard today and you want to see more, please make sure that you become a member of the WICT Network Carolinas. Follow our social media pages on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. We have so much more in store for you for 2026. There will be a survey that you'll receive at the end of this webinar. I believe it should come to your email. Please make sure you fill it out. Your feedback definitely helps us to continue to create meaningful content for you. What's not for me will miss me. I'm looking at the chat. Awesome job. That's right. You got people thinking and writing these things down. It's going to be our new affirmations that we put up on our mirrors. So I want to thank everyone who joined us. And let's continue to advocate for ourselves and amplify one another. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.